There's a verse in the Bible that just really comes to mind. It sheds a lot of light on this. It's Colossians 3:23, and it basically just says, work for God. And when you can do that, whether you're an employee or whether you're an independent contractor or whether you're a business owner, no matter what you're doing or where you've been in your past, that's a consistent thing that doesn't have to change. And so you can really enjoy working with God your whole life.
Welcome to the Up Your Average podcast, where Keith and Doug give no-nonsense advice to level up your life. So buckle up and listen closely to Up Your Average.
So I was reading a conference board statistic today. It says job security, 69% of U.S. consumers see a recession as somewhat or very likely in the next 12 months, and only 22.9% of that are extremely or somewhat concerned about losing their jobs. 22 to 22.9 are concerned about losing their jobs. You tie that to the idea that we have the largest graduating high school class in U.S. history this year.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be the peak. I think we spoke on former weeks about that we're kind of going into a demographic decline of U.S.-born citizens. And so the idea of a job and what's the job was kind of what I thought we might kind of dialogue a little bit and what that looks like at different situations in life. I was talking to a friend earlier, and I've kind of been a cynic towards the financial services industry most of my adult life, just because of the wacky stuff I hear coming. But
in fairness, you're a cynic to a lot of things.
I'm pretty cynical. I like that. A smile.
Yeah, this isn't just about the industry. This is in general.
Some things are pretty funny. Yeah, so our industry, as long as I've been in the specifics of financial advice, I feel like they have been teaching that the object of work is to quit working. Like they call it retirement.
Yeah.
But they pound you at such an early age that it becomes almost a belief system that I better worry about this today when I'm Caleb's age. When Caleb, I don't think he really needs to worry about retirement. He needs to worry about not being one of those 22.9% that might be unemployed next year, right?
I was part of a group of guys where we'd meet, get together, learn, share business success, personal successes. And one of the terms that I remember hearing during that time was this idea of an acronym called FIRE. Do you know it?
I don't, no.
So FIRE stood for financially independent, or financial independence, retire early.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It is hey, work and then stop working so you can live this life of leisure and luxury.
And Jim Pinkston, I don't know if you remember him saying it, but I heard him say it probably 50 times that work is honorable.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so wise that work is, well, I mean, it is one of the results, hard work, I think one of the results of the fall of mankind is that from the sweat of your brow.
Well, the pain in the neck stuff, that happens because of that.
Hard work stuff is going to be there.
But there was work before that happening.
And so hard work, maybe that's what when you're thinking about work and you're rethinking retirement, maybe it's not trying to avoid work, but try to balance out the hard work with other forms of work, maybe what you evolve to, because there's the benefit. Money can buy you space. Like we can pay people to do some hard work things we don't want to do ourselves because we've accumulated money, but to avoid work itself, probably, I'm pretty sure it leads to some of the degradation of your brain function over time.
Well, and even to avoid hard work is going to be impossible because you run into roadblocks. It is tough. But I think the aim of the why am I working, who am I working for, like that type of clarity, that's what I would like to focus on.
Yeah.
And I think you started this off saying that U.S. consumers say.
Yeah.
And even that, I don't know where that data came from, but U.S. consumers say that's how the TV shows, the analysts, they come out and they talk about U.S. consumers saying, and maybe that's where we need to shift. Being a consumer is fine. Nobody has to teach you how to spend money.
Right.
I mean, you will just naturally like to spend money on things that you either need or want. But it would be interesting if it was, instead of U.S. consumers say, if it was U.S. producers say.
Right. The industrial group, what are they saying?
The people who make stuff say.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. And the consumers would ultimately tell them what to make and what not to make, right? Like that's part of what.
Maybe. I mean, what did Henry Ford say? Like, if he asked his customers what they wanted, they'd tell him build faster horses or make faster horses or something like that.
Yeah.
And so sometimes just expressing your creativity and producing a product that you're not sure if people want, or you're not sure if the market wants or is ready for it, you create a market and you create an appetite just by doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea of how work evolves is kind of what I was thinking where we might go to is work evolves. And part of what work evolves is because technology evolves. And so maybe in today's dialogue, we can address both ends of the spectrum where we help people. We help those who are recent graduates. We don't spend a ton of our energy on that, but we really want to cheer them on to do what you're talking about, to use their creativity. And then the other end is those people where work evolves, where they've maybe finished a career doing something, but they have a lot of creativity left in them. And so I was working with AI this morning, and I was thinking about this because maybe even those people in the middle ground might not feel pressure of the next 12 months with the economy, but the news is harping that your job's going away because of artificial intelligence. And this was the little research I did this morning. I said, what jobs were pretty prevalent in 1900 that were gone in 1950? So in 1900, I could just lean into this. In 1900, you could have been a lamplighter, an ice cutter, a switchboard operator, a carriage driver, and this one I like, a knocker up.
Which is what?
In 1900, you would knock on somebody's door to wake them up because they didn't have alarm clocks.
Okay.
I didn't even know that was a job, but that was 1900. So then I said, what about 1950 to 2000? What jobs went away? And I'll explain why I think this thought process is interesting. In 1950, you could have been a telegraph operator, an elevator operator, a typesetter, a pen setter, and a milkman, which those jobs were prevalent. And then in 2020, what went away was a video store clerk, or 2000, a video store clerk, a travel agent, a data entry clerk, a telemarketer, which is kind of how I got in this business, and a newspaper delivery person. So those roles all went away, but something backfilled for all those people. And so whatever is going on, I don't think you have to be concerned about AI doing away. It's going to do away with a lot of repetitive type jobs. Just like if you look at all those that I mentioned, they're all technology that kind of blew those things out. Somebody else's creativity did away with the job that everybody had.
Yeah.
So let's say this, Doug. Let's say, I say financial planning is really easy. If you just tell me that, if you gave me a total bucket of how much money you're going to spend in your entire lifetime, and we fill that bucket up, this is how much you have to spend, then all I have to do is replace that bucket with money to spend.
Okay.
And so the question is, do I have enough money? Would be, how do I shift my thoughts about work? Or I could conceivably, by my consumption things, make that bucket smaller. But how do I replace my spending with earnings? How does that look like in a job for people at whatever situation they are? And so, LJ's 3 years from graduating. He's going to be wondering, what do I do for a job?
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we help him find his niche?
Yeah. So I think you take money out of the equation, personally. and you realize that you're a creative person and you have creativity built inside your DNA, and you go for it with the thing that sparks you. And if that's being an actor, fine. And your dad says, no, there's no money in that. Don't do that. Become a I don't know, computer programmer. Do something realistic. I think you go with what creativity is in your heart, and then you move on that with a ton of confidence until it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is really hard, I think. Don't you like that?
No, who's telling you that message today?
I mean, for me, both my parents worked in secure places like their whole career where it was predictable.
Yeah.
And when I walked away from one of those to do something that was highly unpredictable, it was really hard for them to wrap their brain around.
That's why I think our industry has it backwards, because our industry probably likes the FIRE idea,
Right.
Financial independence, retire early. We probably like that idea as our industry, because how does that keep us afloat? You're pouring dollars into our business. But I prefer the idea of you have creativity inside of you to do big stuff. And when you have that, you're able to have satisfaction in a new way that money just can't buy.
And really, I think as you go about that, one of those ideas, Mike Rowe, somewhere out there, if you look on YouTube, he has a video where he talked about being a freelancer, whereas a freelancer was a hired person that they weren't employed, but they would come in and fight a battle. And then when that battle's gone, they go find another battle to do that. And that's ultimately where somebody's got to think, because they have to think, am I going to be an employee in whatever this drives my spirit, or am I going to be independent? And probably most people will find going independent is going to be you're going to probably eat a little bit more rice and beans for a while than you probably would as an employee. There's a little coming out of the gates as an employee. There's probably a little bit more security and income, and it may not be the way to get to your creativity.
I mean, there's a verse in the Bible that just really comes to mind. It sheds a lot of light on this. It's Colossians 3:23, and it basically just says, work for God. And when you can do that, whether you're an employee or whether you're an independent contractor or whether you're a business owner, no matter what you're doing or where you've been in your past, that's a consistent thing that doesn't have to change. And so you can really enjoy working with God your whole life. And you can do that when you're in your prime. You can do that when you're not in your prime. You can do that when you're right out of high school. You can do that in any job that exists on the planet. You can do that in any country. It's just limitless. And so I think that's where I would encourage people to start is why are you going to do anything? The kids today, I think it's so tough because they've got everything at their fingertips to keep them busy, especially with guys. You get just the internet, you get video games, you got every reason to stay at home inside your house and not leave and take a chance. And if you have something else that's deeper inside, say, hey, I'm doing this because I've got creativity built inside of me and I can do it for God. Then you've got a recipe to take some risk and do something big.
That I've probably meditated on that verse daily for probably a decade, many years ago. And the part of that really stirred me was it said, whatever you do it wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And that word would be, if you're going to translate it into a modern day word, is enthusiastically. And that word is grounded in the idea of two different things. In theos is where it comes from, is God within you. And so how I've thought through this, Doug, is that I think I could do most roles in life enthusiastically, because the one that really strikes me a lot is my garbage man. And I think I could do his role enthusiastically, because what I know that I didn't know when I was 20 was that if I can frame what I'm doing with the idea that I'm helping other people in a way, it can make just about any job meaningful. And if you think it's just about the task at hand, you could get really disgruntled in the task that may be the greatest thing you're ever supposed to do, because to become a financial advisor, there's just stuff that's not fun, right? That you have to navigate your way through some of those things that are difficult. But if you realize, man, I can do this enthusiastically because there's a greater end to this, I'm going to help people. And so I could literally see myself throwing bags in the trash truck because I could just realize those people would be in a world of hurt if they didn't get rid of that trash, right?
Yeah, if I look back at all the different jobs I've had, and I've had a lot of different jobs. I started mowing lawns when I was in sixth grade with my friend Gabe, worked at some car dealerships, worked at a running shoe store. All these jobs I've had in my life, I've just enjoyed the work. And I've enjoyed it because mainly the people in front of me modeled how work is it adds dignity to your life. It gives you something that you just couldn't do on your own. It gives you relationships that you couldn't have had if you didn't have that work. And so I'm just super thankful. I think back to my dad. My dad serviced bands across central Indiana. He would drive to a high school or middle school band and he would fix somebody's clarinet or whatever. And so I got to see the service side of our economy through my dad. And then one day, I don't know if it's just me or if my sisters were there or my mom, but I remember I was there with my dad. I got to go to a factory and we drove up to Elkhart and we went to the Selmer Music Factory. And I got to see French horns being made. And I thought, wow, I've seen French horns played. I've seen my dad work on a French horn. I've never seen a French horn being made. And that was a beautiful thing to be able to see this piece of brass being shaped and twisted into a beautiful instrument. And that's the producer side that work can bring you. And I think that goes all the way back to in the beginning when God started making stuff. And it's that kind of thing that gets me really excited about our economy instead of just the consumer side, the producer side, because that's the beginning of a lot of really great stuff. And you can't script it. And so to say, hey, I want to retire early. Well, you don't start making French horns to retire early. You start making French horns because you just can't help yourself but love a French horn.
I think of our friend Saban that we interviewed a few weeks ago, and Saban, I think, is in his 60s, and his fingers are like his knuckles are kind of malformed from being a sculptor. And he didn't see the benefit of all that time until he was in his 60s, right? Like or late 50s of one of his masterpieces being done. And today, like I had a video from him yesterday of what he is doing now in his latest thing. And he's enthusiastic as he's ever been about that in his 60s. So maybe he's just launching in his 60s. Colonel Sanders didn't launch until he was his 60s. And I think some of that enthusiasm can be stolen from people as they mature, probably because some of the things that have changed in corporate America in the last 30 or 40 years, where corporate America began focusing on the growth of profits rather than being profitable. And when corporate America did that, it made it harder to be an employee because they looked at you as a pawn on a chessboard. And then it began to devalue humans. And so as your employer devalues you, then it's a lot harder to come to that office in a enthusiastic manner. And that may just be a beacon to you as an employee that maybe I need to step away from this place and see if there's not another place for me to plug into. But it's really hard.
I don't know what it was like to be a kid in the 50s or the 60s or really even the 70s. I was born mid 70s, but I think something may have changed in my lifetime. Whereas, like when I think about dads going to work, it's mainly dads in my circle, and I think, hey, my dad has a cooler job than your dad.
Yeah. environment.
Or whatever, and so I'm not sure that that's the thing anymore.
Right, right. That work maybe isn't honorable. Maybe it's not as noble as it seemed. But maybe we bring that back by just having a conversation.
I would love to bring that back. I would love to hear some kids say, "Hey, my dad's got a cooler job than your dad," because
Go ahead, Caleb.
because I do think that there's so much coolness in work, and nobody values work more than the guy or the gal who's been laid off or who is looking for a job. Nobody values work more than them. And so, if I were, and I'm only coming from what I know, but if I were hanging out with a friend who was going through that, I would be wanting to encourage them to just dig deep on their creative side and understand that they have something inside of them that can be unleashed into the marketplace and highly valued because of just who they are.
And it's such a broad topic, and because you can make your work your identity, and then that can create all kinds of problems as well. And so there's just a tightrope of this journey. You can make it your identity. You can make it your provider. You think it's gotcha. And I was talking to a friend earlier today that he was just one of the top-notch engineers out there, and he literally couldn't find work for many, many months. And that's probably been more normal in U.S. history than it has been in the last 50 years. Like the last 50 years, there's been an abundance of jobs. We might have they call it a Great Recession, and I don't want to sound cold-blooded. I don't think it was as difficult in 2008 or 9 as what was going on in the 60s and 70s from what I observed. And so it was difficult, but the unemployment rates, there's been times where it's just a really high period of unemployment. And so those people that can't find work but desire work, it's just going to be a really important thing, maybe to just do what you do wholeheartedly as to the Lord.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always envision the pictures from the Great Depression and those dudes who are wearing top hats and just really sporty clothes, waiting in the soup lines because they couldn't even earn enough to eat. And those kind of times would really wear, I think, on your soul pretty hard. But again, I think there's always hope. There's always opportunity out there.
Well, our educational system, our church organizations, they really don't do a great job talking about work and the dignity of work. I think both of those organizations preach balance and, hey, you're doing this for your family, or you're doing this for to give to ministries, and you're doing this for your society. And I just think those are all the wrong aims. Even to do it for your family, I think that's the wrong aim. It's a benefit, but I think the aim is, hey, I'm doing this for God because He's given this to me. He's given this creativity to me, and then stuff works out.
Yeah, and when I was thinking about this, there's a special time in history where that creativity really gives you opportunities. Whereas, say, in Africa, you're going to be somewhat limited what that does for you today. You're going to be able to take the highest forms of work, like maybe build shelter, find food, and work, and maybe even like soldiering to protect those things that you have. Maybe all that you do in a day. Maybe you're just going and trying to find a wild animal today. But depending on where you find yourself in prosperity, you can use that creativity in a lot of ways. Even the African guy is going to use the creativity to trap his animal or whatever. But where you are, I think the creativity is going to be the key thing. Like if you're in the 1930s difficult economy and you can't find work, your work may be just figuring out, what do I do?
No doubt about it. Yeah.
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 And there is such a idea of work in the critical part of it when we defined what we thought were the most 5 important things for like a recent graduate to know about money. One of them was to like what you do. And that's kind of what you've been talking about, right? Liking what you do.
I would even go so far to say if you don't like what you do, you can still like who you're doing it for. Yeah. And if you don't like what you do, I would say that's a great thing. I mean, I worked at the overhead door factory in Hartford City and didn't necessarily like what I was doing every day, but I was learning valuable skill sets and developing my worldview. And that wouldn't have happened unless I'd done jobs like that. And so I think the aim is, instead of it being so transactional of like, hey, I'm going to get this or see this benefit, it's just to stay present in what you're doing and realizing that what you're doing has great purpose to it because of who you're doing it for.
And really what you're talking about is a mindset, which I think a mindset is an attitude. It's a predetermined way of looking at something that if I could go be your trash man, that means before I jumped on that truck, I would have already defined my attitude towards that. I wasn't going to wait until I jumped on there, because I've had so many difficult jobs as a youngster, and I didn't understand this idea, what we're talking about. I just thought I was going to get a paycheck. Right. I think if you think you're just going to get a paycheck, you've already struggled. We were talking.
Well, you've set a limit.
Yeah, you've set a limit on your possibilities of what you think about this place.
Right.
And Caleb and I were talking to one of our friends this week, and he got laid off during the Great Recession. And he told us that he had a period of bitterness about it.
Sure.
And that's a mindset, right? Like, you could be bitter the rest of your life about a job situation, or you could say, you know what? This world is ever evolving, and if I get laid off, I get fired, whatever, it's just a reset button. It's not the end. And what he said that really reminded me of something that would kind of cause my gut to churn as an employer was I can't remember if it was that week or the week before, had to fire somebody, and that what they said, not to him, but somebody else in the organization, that's not my job.
Right. And that makes sense to me.
Yeah, because if you have the right mindset, you shouldn't probably be telling your employer, if you're employed by somebody, that's not my job, because it tells them you've got the wrong attitude about this role.
And I don't blame that person, because we've set ourselves up in the workplace on what do they call those things? KPIs, key performance indicators. And so we have all these metrics that consultants and people have given us to define what it is we do, and don't go outside those borders. And you have to, and you get to, if you have the mindset of, hey, who am I really doing this for? Then you can go pick up the trash that's in the parking lot, even though that's not in your border, or you can make a phone call to a client or to a key customer that maybe isn't even your responsibility, but you can still do it. But when we've defined the borders so much, I can see where someone would say that's not my job.
What I loved about this man is that he's the CEO, and he has an office where they work out of, and he'll take the young people on a regular basis and walk out to the yard in front of their business with like a Walmart bag or a grocery bag with them, and he'll show them how to pick up the trash. Like, he will pick up the trash.
That's cool.
And he'll do it on a regular basis. And he's not saying, this is what I expect you to do. He's saying that we all pitch in and we all do things. And so we're running out of time, but I really have a heart for, I think a lot of what we said today, Doug, might be the Caleb's or the LJ's, the recent graduates. But what about the graduate? I talked to a friend yesterday that July the 4th is his Independence Day. He's walking away from his former career, and he's probably early 60s. What about work for those folks? Like, there is still an honor to keep this body moving into your 60s, 70s, and 80s. What would you tell them when it's not necessarily the identifying role that they might have had during their...
Nothing's finished out there. Even like, if you believe that God created stuff, which I do, it's not like, it was all done. He allows us to keep contributing to this thing and keep building. And so I would encourage whoever it is, if you're, 16 and looking for your first job, or whether you just got laid off and you're 58, I would just encourage you that it's not done out there, and that there's stuff that needs to be added to and moved forward, and go for it. Call me. I would love to walk through life with you, even if you're down. I would just like to encourage you that there's stuff out there where you can make a difference. That's how I'd start. I'd just start making a difference.
Boy, and to think what you've got stored between your ears, what information you have, AI might be able to pull that information, but it's not going to be able to practically use that information in such a profitable way that you can. And if you are struggling, don't hesitate to call us to figure out how to plug that energy in, because there is such a benefit, particularly I can see of taking what you know and investing it into the generation or two or three behind you, because they really need that energy poured into them, I think.
I would also encourage whoever that is to really lean into your relationships. I think all of this is all about relationships. And so if you don't have any relationships, I would encourage you to get out of your house, and maybe you start hanging out at a free place like the library, and you're just reading a book there, but you might meet someone. You might say hello to somebody who needs it today, or you might make a contact at a coffee shop, or just getting out of your routine and pouring into relationships, because those are the people who might have something in motion where you get to be a part of it.
And Caleb really got to experience this again this week when he had a 90-something-year-old tell him a homework assignment, which I really loved the idea of that homework assignment. He wasn't going to tell Caleb what the answer of it was. He wanted him to go discover it himself. And there's a lot that can go on in a multi-generational friendship like that. And again, if you're struggling, if you're too introverted to make that happen, give us a call. We'll help you figure that out, because you have a lot to offer.
Or if you're too extroverted to actually get serious and look yourself in the mirror, I'm there for you too.
Well, we really believe work is honorable. I have a feeling we're going to have more conversations in the future about this, but if you've got feedback for us and thoughts on this, we'd love to hear that, and we'd love for you to reach out to us. But if you want to really make a difference too, I would just encourage you to value the workers who cross your path today, whoever they are. Give them a smile, tell them what a great job they're doing. Let them know that their work is valued by somebody as easy as just you guys.
So you're just saying, open your eyes to what's in front of you today.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are trash people that don't see the value of what they have, and they're not. Their attitude can be adjusted very easily by just a good word. If somebody can help them see their role better, which you all can do, you may change the world and just helping somebody else see their role better.
That is the natural way. People doing stuff. That's good.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us. We appreciate your presence more than you know. And if you do have ideas for future Up Your Average, give us a call. Let us know. In the meantime, live big.